Hi there, on this screencast I'm going to do a quick review of indenting and go over a little bit about assignment statements and data types, and that should be good for tomorrow's quiz. Alright, so in the first window here I have some code that I'm going to indent correctly. So the rule is, whenever I encounter an open curly brace, the very next line of code is going to be tabbed in by 1. Then after that, I continue on at the same level until I hit either another closing one or an opening one. I just hit another opening one, so I'm going to tab in 1 more. Then I continue on at that level. And I'm going to tab in. Alright, now I have a closing one, so it's going to be out or tabbed backwards 1 level. Then the next line after it will be at the same level. Then I have another opening one, so after that one I'm going to tab in. Oh, here's a closing one, so it comes back out. And this is going to be tabbed in. It's going to be tabbed in. I'm just going to delete these lines of code so I can get through this. Alright, so now I'm going to do a, here's a closing one, it comes back out. Here's another closing one, it comes back out 1. And then I continue on. An opening one, tab in. A closing one is back out 1, and the final one is also back out 1. So if you can just remember that on either side of a set of curly braces, so if we look here at this if statement, where I'm pointing, you'll notice that the line above the opening curly brace is at the same level of indentation, and the line after the closing curly brace is at the same level of indentation. It's the code that is in between the curly braces that is indented, and that code only. Okay, so that's indenting, and now let's take a look at a few assignment statements. So here I have a form. I have one button on it, and once again it is very important that you name your buttons before writing any code. And not just buttons, but any control objects that you will be referencing in code. So I'm going to call this one btn click. Alright, and now I'm going to create an event handler for it. Alright, and in the event handler, or in the code window, I'm going to declare a few variables. So I'm going to declare, these are a global variable named x that will be of type int, which can store integers. A bool variable that is of type y, which will be able to store true or false values. A double variable of type z, which will be able to store decimal values. And lastly, a string variable, we'll call it q, and that will be able to store a set of characters that's in quotation marks. So examples of data that an int variable could store would be -4 or 4, -1,000, 250, 234. The positive and negative integers, essentially. Bool variables can only store true or false. Double variables include all decimal values, positive and negative, and actually they can also store integer values. They'll add a 0.0 on the end, but so essentially you can store integer values. And then lastly, string variables will store strings of characters. So those are examples of the type of data that can be assigned to the different variables of different data types. Now, when you're declaring a variable, you always list the data type first, and then the name of the variable, and then a semicolon. Now, you can declare a variable and give it its initial value at the same time. So if I do, let's see, int, I'll call it x1 equals 6, that both declares the variable and then assigns it a value all in the same step. And this is also known as initializing a variable when you give it its first value. Okay, so those are global variables because they're declared underneath the class statement. Their scope is anywhere within the block of code where they were defined, as so long as the code comes after the point where they were defined. Now, global variables anywhere in the class, you can reference them. If, on the other hand, I have a local variable like I'll call int y1, and I declare it, you know, in the click event for that button, if I add another button and I try to reference that variable, I'm going to get an error message. And the error message says name1 y1 does not exist in the current context. That's because it hasn't been declared in that block of code. Where I declared the y1 variable, its scope is only within the button click event handler. It cannot be referenced or used at all anywhere other than within the event handler where it was declared, which is essentially the block of code that encompasses the event handler. Okay, so assignment statements are simply give values, or statements that assign values or states of being to either a variable or a control object. So every assignment statement will have an equal sign, and at least an equal sign, and it will have a semicolon as well. So down here in the button 1 click event, I'm going to assign values to my global variables. So I'm going to say x equals 9, and then I'm going to say y equals true, and then I'm going to say z equals negative 6.78, and then lastly x1 equals, that's another int variable, 89. So those are assignment statements for values for variables. Now I'm going to have an assignment statement for a control object. So I'm going to assign the background color of button click. So I'm going to say to be color.red. So I'm going to say button click dot back color equals color.red. Alright, so that will essentially assign color.red to the back color property of the object named btn click, button click. Alright, and that's the format for assigning a value for, or state for, a property of a control object. It's the name of the control object, the dot decimal point, or dot, then the name of the property, equals, and then finally what you are assigning to that property of that control object. So if I run this and I click on the one button, if I click on button 1, then the other button should turn red. So let's see. Yep, and it did it. Okay, I think that's about it. I think I covered the importance. topics. The quiz tomorrow should be pretty straightforward and fairly simple. So I hope this was helpful to a few of you. The secret sentence for tonight is Jack Dorsey is now Twitter's permanent CEO. So that was in the news today. So in the tech world, and once again, that is Jack Dorsey is Twitter's new permanent CEO. All right, get a good night's sleep, and we will see you tomorrow. Cheers.